Hey YouTube, it's Faye, and for today's video, I've got something planned for you guys that I was never expecting to do on my channel before, and that is a learn with me. As you know, most of these videos are DIY tutorials where I come to you as an authority on the topic, where I come to you having done the job dozens of times, maybe even hundreds of times depending on the job, and I'm telling you, this is how I know for sure to do this job. You can follow this tutorial with confidence. Today, as you can see behind me, I have my car. That's right, this is my personal Supra. This is a 2021 A91 Special Edition Supra in refraction blue, my favorite color, maybe second only, okay, to HE2 Ice Blue Pearl. And I'm about to dive into a job I have never done before, and I'm gonna take you along for the ride only because someone requested this on the Mark V Supra forums, and I don't want to let them down. Behind me you will see a bunch of parts. Oh, and the carpet for the Mark IV. The carpet for the Mark IV has arrived, so good timing. It's sitting out on the floor and I'm letting it rest. I'll be installing that in a future video. I've actually been doing a bunch of things in the Mark IV, but I'm trying to make it into a much longer, more detailed video. But that's not what this video is about. I have an oil pump. I have more one-time use bolts than I have ever seen in my life, and an oil pump strainer, because today we are going to be replacing the oil pump for the first time ever. I'm going to be following different service instructions, the Toyota/BMW service instructions. I'm hoping that I went through every single one of those hundreds of pages of repair documents and got every single one-time use renew bolt that I need to do this job. Pretty much up until my model year, the oil pump was made with a plastic adjusting ring, and Toyota and BMW have since changed this part, and it is now a sintered steel adjusting ring inside of the oil pump. These plastic adjusting rings are known to fail over time, especially in colder climates, and even though I live in Texas, just knowing that is stressful enough for me that I do not want to risk driving her and damaging her engine until I've replaced mine with the upgraded part. And the most common signs that your plastic oil pump adjusting ring has failed will be low oil pressure warnings and an inability to measure your oil level, although many B58 owners have also reported a plethora of other symptoms as well. I think that's enough intro. Let's get right into it. I'm going to show you the parts that I have, and I will also show you the special tools that I'm using to do this job. Let's go. Starting with the parts, here is the oil pump itself. Here is the part number. I will list everything in the description below that I use after I verify that I got everything right. Okay, so the final list in the description is going to be the final list for sure. This is the biggest oil pump. I've never seen a Toyota oil pump look like this before. If you look through the hole, I am seeing the adjusting ring, and I am seeing that it's steel. It's an updated part, so make sure that you purchase the most recent version of the part. I also got a new strainer or filter. The reason I got this, I mean, just because there's any chunks in it, obviously, but more importantly, because I thought, not sure, this was the only way to get this O-ring, which apparently is one-time use. Oil filters. And I actually grabbed 3 of these when I was at the dealership because I'll be doing one today, and then I'm going to be doing an oil change in 500 miles because I'm neurotic. And then the fasteners. And now that I'm on the other side of this job, here are the bolts that I did replace, that I did use, and then I did miss some. We'll get to that. So these are the 12 bolts. It says 10. They come in packages of 10, so you order 1 package and then 2 extra from the dealership. There's the part number 4, the lower stiffening plate. Then for the subframe, there are 4 different bolts, and you're gonna need 2 of each. And here they all are. And then for the oil pump, you have 4 bolts holding in the oil pump. Then you have 1 left-hand thread bolt for the oil pump gear. And then these 2 little dowel pins, little centering dowel pins. This I used, but you could just get a generic Christmas tree clip. This is a one-time use clip that holds on part of the acoustic cover. And then I just got a package of these on Amazon. When I was taking off my fender liners and my little undercarriage plastics, I was just missing some of these, so I just got some replacements, and I'll link all of this stuff in the description below. And while you may be thinking to yourself, hey, that is a crazy amount of one-time use fasteners for an oil pump replacement job, and you would be right. Actually, this is not even all of them. I definitely missed some when I was first looking through the repair procedure, and it wasn't until I was putting everything back together and doing some torque to yield, I was like, wait a second, I'm surprised this isn't one-time use. Turns out it was. So I actually just placed my second order of parts for this job, which I will be replacing on my car, so I will be doing this job correctly, and then adding to future repair orders so that I've got, you know, the full list of parts that it totally takes to do this job when price quoting this out to customers. So that being said, here's what I just ordered. Starting with the bolts for these engine braces. Should have known. Sway bar nuts. Not just for the end links, but also for the brackets. Tie rod end nuts. And this is the one that made me look a little closer. Upper control arm bolt and nut, and then lower control arm nut as well. All right, so that is truly the entire list of one-time use fasteners. Do with that what you will. Let's get into the tools. Tools you're gonna need: a transmission jack. I also used some blocks of wood with this. A lift would be very helpful. A 2-post would be better. I used a drive on, and you'll see it's fine. An engine support bar. I got this from Harbor Freight. And then you're gonna need this special bracket. I made my own. So at the very least, a piece of flat metal and the ability to drill into it. You're gonna need a basic metric socket set. I don't even know why I bothered pulling these out. You should have all these 8, 10, 13, 14, 16, 17. I did actually use a Wobbly 16 for the sway bar nuts. I thought that was easiest. We have a large impact 17 for the wheels, and we have a 21 for the tie rod nut, and you do need an extension for that. We've got some basic extensions and your basic ratchets, 3/8 and 1/4 inch drive. This is a special, very thin 1/4 inch drive with a T45 on it. This is a special tool. As listed, we've got a deep 18, we have a shallow 32, 14, 16, 18, and over here we got a bunch of E-torx. Oh my goodness, do not make the same mistake I did. I was missing a couple of these. You're gonna need E8, 10, 12, 14, 16, and 18. Also used a T25 torx. Small pocket screwdrivers, a paint marker, little screwdriver, a couple of pick tools. These came in handy, both a 90-degree and a little hook pick tool, a trim clip tool. The paint marker, actually I just sort of glazed over this, but if you do not have a degree torque wrench, this is a great alternative. We've got some BMW hood extenders, 2 styles of gasket scraper, although I don't use the metal ones for actually scraping the gasket. I use the plastic one, very important. This I used as a gear holding tool. A little mirror. 18mm wrench. This is a special tool for applying the Loctite. A little pair of pliers, a plethora of different size pry bars. I use this little degree tool with my paint marker, an oil drain pan, jack stands, a soft hammer with some blocks of wood. I used some battery power, and don't ask me how I somehow managed to use every single torque wrench that I own. And then a 1/2 inch and a 3/8 drive breaker bar. For supplies, here's a special sealant for the oil pan. I also used assembly lube and both red and blue Loctite, lots of brake parts cleaner, and 6.9 quarts of engine oil. Finally, enough yapping already. Let's actually get to work. Remove the plastic engine cover, and preparing to drain the engine oil, let's remove the oil cap. 32mm socket, and I'm just gonna loosen the oil filter housing here, just crack it loose so all the oil drains out of here as well. While we're here, quick note about my lift. You preferably want to use a 2-post lift for this job, and you'll see why later in this video when I get the subframe out. It just doesn't fit between the ramps, but I make do just fine. Now, twisting off this cover to access the oil drain plug. Below the oil drain, I have an extremely clean bucket. Okay, you guys, I'm draining this oil into a bucket. Got my 17mm socket. Don't judge me, people. This oil has 30 miles on it, 30. And after I replace the oil pump, I'm actually gonna do a follow-up oil change in 500 miles. Probably less, actually, just to work out any, whoa, debris from the, actually, you know, now that I look at it, it doesn't look as clean as a 30 miles. Well, we'll see. Let me just let that drain out. And then I will reassess, okay, people? Alrighty, it's done. But I'm not liking, we're gonna measure that oil. Yeah, the oil was not just changed. All right, well now I'm actually gonna put the car back down on the ground because I'm gonna disconnect the negative battery cable, and also because I'm gonna pull that oil filter out after all and just take a look inside of it, because now I'm a little nervous. Ooh. Ooh. Alrighty, we're just doing the oil change. We are just doing the oil change. There's the oil change in the oil pump, but I'm just gonna go ahead and put the new filter in there. And I am gonna take apart the other filter. Brandon just came and brought me coffee, so I'm ready to move forward. We're gonna go into the trunk and disconnect the negative battery terminal. 10mm socket. Now we're gonna remove the #1 integration relay. Now after all of this, many days later, and looking back on the work that I did, and why the heck did they ask me to do that? So I realized that the way to make it easiest to reinstall the subframe, you do wanna raise the engine. Raising the engine can put the integration relay and the ECU in danger. That is why you remove them. In hindsight though, I don't remove them. That was a waste of time and I don't think it's necessary. All right, I'm gonna install these parts. That being said, I did it. I will show you how to do it in case you want to follow the instructions to a T like I did here for the first time, but otherwise just disregard this and skip ahead. We're disconnecting all of these connectors here. I am going to take a photo of this because all the connectors have different color tape on them here, but it does appear that they could be installed incorrectly. Yeah, it looks like you could install them wrong. So definitely make note of which connectors go where. For this last connector here, I did use this pick tool to reach in and pull up the tab and then squeeze it. Then down in here to remove the integration relay, there are these little tabs that you're gonna push down on that will release it. And now that it's out, you can see where that rear tab is. Now let's disconnect all of the connectors on the ECU, which also have colored tape on them, which I can only assume helps identify their order as well. Now I've got my E14 inverse Torx. I'm just gonna get this strut brace out of the way. All right, so we got all of these unplugged from the ECU. We've detached it here, we've unclipped it here. Got this little guy, maybe we'll get this little guy. All right, now we've got a couple 10mm bolts. Okay, this is a lot of new styles of fasteners, that I'm learning today. All right, and then I think there's one more. Yep, down in here I've got to get this lower wire harness detached. Alrighty, taking this out. Just following instructions. No clue why we're taking this out. Oh, no, and this is still attached here. You've just got to go in there with a little flathead screwdriver and pry all those little tabs, and then it slides down. All right, so we'll get this out of here. Now we're gonna do something a little more normal, and I'm gonna remove the front wheels. Also unrelated, but very exciting, when going back together, I'll be using these. These are sold by Speed Industry. This is the 78mm, and they call it the stud conversion kit because you see the threads are different. So this is the factory thread pitch, the 1.25, but then this side is 1.5. And it allows you, as you can see, it's pretty long, so it allows you to use a spacer if you want to use a spacer. I'm not gonna. I'm just factory wheels here, nothing fancy. But then also, you get a much wider range of different styles of lug nut of your choosing. So you can put, you know, just a lot more generic, more options. So, kind of cool. I'm just gonna use these that came with it for now until I find something I like better. Also have the hex head there to make them easy to install. That I got, actually, from Supras in Vegas. On a bad day with this car. I got myself some presents that day to make myself feel better. But so anyway, we'll be doing this on the way back together. Now we're gonna be removing the fender liners on both sides. There's 13 8mm screws, and then there's one little plastic clip all the way in the back here. Now I'm gonna do the other side. The procedure's the same, you don't need to see it. So now, back underneath the car, we're gonna remove these two outer plastics. This inner plastic, actually this one comes first, then this pan, which is actually a structural component of the car. Removing this, you've gotta replace all these one-time use bolts, and it is advised not to drive without this. So, all right, we're just gonna continue with our little 8mm, get all these plastics off. And then I have my 16mm socket for removing these 12 fasteners holding in this aluminum stiffener plate. Well, stiffening plate, according to BMW. But if you ask Toyota, this is a front suspension member lower protector. But I just can't take it seriously with a name like that. Now that I have it off too, I can see I've got a little bit of an oil leak going on here. So I'm gonna take a look at where this is coming from, and hopefully while I'm in there, I can diagnose and repair this too. Now that we've undid these guys down here, we can get to this side of the fender liner. So I'll remove this side, and then the other side, once again, just a bunch of 8mm screws. We have these 10mm plastic nut things. So we have 1, 2, 3 of those. And then we also have these funky little clips on the outside edge of the fender liner. What we do, I just learned, is we take a little punch or a little screwdriver and you just poke that thing through. And then that pops the little pin forward, and then you can pull them out. However, this is the side that the collision was on and has been repaired, so these might not be factory. The other side looked like this, so once again, once you just punch them through the middle, that inner piece just flies out, and then you can just pull them forward. Alrighty, so now apparently I'm gonna be removing the downpipe. Hey, Faye from the future here with my infinite wisdom of hindsight. Don't do this. Don't remove any part of the exhaust. It's a big waste of time. I'm gonna leave it in here as an honest part of what I did my first time doing this job. However, if you're actually just trying to do the DIY tutorial, go ahead and skip ahead. I'll put the timestamp right here. If you do remove the exhaust, then you're gonna have to replace the V-band clamp and the exhaust gasket as well, which why would you do that? You know, it's one of those things, once again, blindly following the repair manual, thinking there was some engineer way smarter than me, big brain guy, that knew how to do this job better than just looking at it using some common sense, so forgive me. Now I did remove the rest of the exhaust. There it is, because I'm gonna be installing that one over there. So that is not a necessary part of this video, so I skipped that. So I'm gonna drop the car down yet again and get on top so I can disconnect these two oxygen sensor connectors. Looks like these are them right here. But then they stay stuck here, which, all right, so now we gotta get them off of this plastic piece here. So we've got this little tab right here on the bottom of the connector, and I just went in with my 90-degree pick and pushed it over. Then I was able to slide it off. Now we're gonna take it out of the heat shield clip down here, and then there's another one you can't see. Whatever, just free these wires up, okay? While I'm up here, I read ahead in the repair manual a little bit, and I did install the hood extender tool. Not loving this. It makes me a little nervous. This is really what they do. Okay, all right, I added an extra level of, I'm very nervous about this, but, okay. I got this on Amazon, but it only comes with one of each size, which I don't love. Obviously you can't use both of them at the same time. And this is such a big hood. I think I want one on both sides. So I did just go ahead and order another set of these. So it's like a $67 tool to hold the hood up. I'm not sure if we even need to do this. I'm just following the repair manual. So, all right, let's get back underneath the vehicle and let's finish taking that exhaust pipe out. We have two nuts fastening this little exhaust bracket up there, and then we have a V-band clamp with another 13mm bolt right there. So I'm gonna undo those and we'll get this pipe out. And the oil pan is right here, which we're dropping down. It has not come up yet in the instructions to remove this piece, but I can see the future ahead of me, so let's just do this. Got my 8mm socket once again and a bunch of these. Goodness, I don't know why that one was so hard. All right, so the next step is to install this engine support bar thing. And I just went ahead and did it because I didn't know what it would all entail. And I didn't want to start like ripping things apart and filming it, just like put stuff back together. And what it showed in the repair manual is way different than what I have here. Obviously, I showed you this already when I showed you the tools. This is just a Harbor Freight engine support bar. The BMW and Toyota SSSSS special tool is massive, and it's got all these like 4 arms. It's just intense. I did have to make my own bracket, and I made it out of a seatbelt bracket thing that I took out of a junkyard a long time ago when I wanted to pull an engine out. So I knew it was strong, and that's what I got there. I'll show you what it looks like. There's 2 bolt holes down in there, which you can see I've got the 2, this wire harness is like right in the way, 2 super strong ARP bolts, and then there's the other side of the seatbelt buckle thing, and it's just on that. This looked pretty strong here. Obviously there's the body. I did take off both the plastics on either side just so that I wasn't crunching the plastics, and it kind of looks pretty crazy. Also, you see that I have the air intake box removed. You don't have to do that. While I was working over here, I smelled a terrible smell, and then I found a mouse, actually probably a rat nest in there. So I did remove it, and I'm just gonna clean it. So that's why this is out. You 100% do not have to remove that. Although while we're here, let's take a look at that cool turbo, because it's kind of crazy. It's like integrated into the exhaust manifold, kind of, it looks like. Yeah, wow. All right, very, very crazy. And it's pretty big. I'm also over here looking for that mysterious oil leak. We can see the oil down there, but the turbo looks clean, and I cannot find where it's coming from. So that's a mystery. That's all right, that's fine. Now we're finally starting to get somewhere real. I've got my E14, and we've got these fasteners here on both of the engine mounts. So I'm gonna remove both of those. We're gonna pull out these little ducts. Okay, there's just some little tabs on either side in the back. There, and right there, and then it hooks on, obviously. Now we're gonna do the same thing and remove this side as well, only difference being this little clip for the coolant hose. And then we're gonna disconnect the steering shaft. Up in there is the E10, and it does not say to do so, but I'm also going to mark the steering shaft before I detach it, so I line it up properly when I put everything back together. And then there is another E10 bolt on the upper part of the steering shaft, and I will mention that before removing this, I did verify that you actually don't have to mark anything. It's directional, and I did secure the steering wheel. So I've just got a little pry bar and a soft hammer. We're just gonna detach this. Just breaking loose the splines a little bit, at least there. Now we're gonna detach this coolant pipe from the subframe, and we've got some little E8 fasteners. We're also gonna disconnect both sway bar end links with a 16mm socket. And we're removing this big honkin' wire harness, which obviously is all these little clips, 3 T25 torx screws, and there's 3 connectors here. Oh no, this one, that one terminates right there, so we can keep that one, but that's this guy, so we'll just sort of fish that out of the way. All right, it took me a while to figure out what the heck that thing was, but it is actually hidden up in here. So we've got, you can even see that there should be an 18mm bolt there. So I'm gonna separate this piece here by undoing that 18mm there, and then the same one over here on the other side. Now on each side we've got these E10 bolts we're gonna remove, and we have the same 2 on the other side. Now I think I'm actually gonna pull the entire sway bar just out of the way, because I don't need it, it's just extra weight. Now I do have to keep the power steering attached to the subframe. If it's removed, you will need to do an alignment, but if you keep it in place and you drop down the whole steering rack with the subframe, then you don't have to do an alignment. And I don't want to do an alignment if I don't have to. So we're gonna detach the tie rods from the knuckle here. Our tie rod is a 21mm. And then we've got this adorable little level sensor here for the headlights. Thankfully, I was able to successfully unclip it. Then I'm gonna remove this bolt here, on both sides. Both ends are 18s. Amazing. So we got all those things hanging on both sides. I just repeated it clearly on the other side. So then we've got some E's up in here. 1 and 2. And then this bolt here, another E. This bolt over here, another E. What am I missing? That bolt there, and that bolt there. Now, unfortunately, I had a very bad timing situation happen. This is an amazing little pneumatic lift table here, but my pump went out right now. So I had to borrow a transmission jack from a friend, so we're just gonna do it the old school way. But if you're a BMW tech, or if you work at the Toyota dealership, there's like an amazing special service tool that I do not have. So I'm gonna grab the transmission jack and I'm gonna start taking all of these bolts out. Got an E14 for these front ones. Woo! Some biggins. These rear 2 hex bolts are 21 millimeter, and the other 2 pairs are E18s. Forgive me for this clip, I didn't realize I was so far out of frame, but you can see that I'm using a breaker bar with a socket. This is actually a 14 millimeter socket because I did not have the E18 Torx that I needed here. I did order one next day shipping on Amazon, so I will have it for reinstallation. But in a pinch, you can use regular metric sockets, just don't use them with high torque power tools. And just get the right stuff, please, and learn from my mistakes. I pulled these rear bolts out. They've got this grease on them. Super long one. So I just did this on the other side. I just had to come in with a little pry bar and just give it a little push here. The subframe did keep getting hung up on those 2 long front brackets, and as I lowered it down, I kept on having to pry it free so it would lower evenly. And don't forget to remove the steering shaft once you drop it down far enough to reach it. All right, well now I see why my friend said that a drive-on lift was gonna be tricky, because as you can see, I actually cannot get the subframe down in between the drive-on rails. But that's okay, all we need is to get it out of the way, because now, look. Let's take a look up in there. There is the oil pan, which is what we needed to get to, the whole reason why we removed that. So this is great. All right, the oil pan is wrapped in a blankie, so we're gonna remove this. They call it an acoustic cover. So we can go with that. First, let's get these starter wires out of the way. I've got a 13 millimeter here for this nut. Ooh, that was on there very loose. Noted. And then the 3 clips holding the wire harness onto the acoustic cover. Then it's just a few plastic trim clips holding the cover to the pan. The first one there was the one-time use clip. Probably could have just gone with a generic Christmas tree clip from an assortment kit rather than the OE replacement, but oh well. Now that I'm here looking at the oil pan itself, I'm sure you know exactly what I'm thinking if you own one of these cars too, and that is, where the heck can I fit a dipstick tube? Where can I fit a dipstick tube, people? Here on the starter, we have 1, 2, 3 E10 screws. Is that also an E? This just fell. Not good. What did this fall from? We'll figure that out. Okay. Well, I don't know. That doesn't just happen, right? So I'm thinking this is another casualty of the accident, and I'm thinking that this mount is also bad. I think that, I don't know, but my guess is that this is hydraulic, that there's fluid in there. And that's where all of this is coming from, not from the engine, because there's no oil leaks that I can see, like nothing up here. And look, it's right here, it's only right here, and it seems to be underneath here and not on top. And where would it come from? The turbo? No, like that, it doesn't make, so that's what I'm thinking is this. So I ordered another mount. Thankfully it was only 80 bucks, And then I also ordered a new bracket, and thankfully this was only 60 bucks. Those will be here in 3 to 5 days. That is gonna slow down my ability to get that job done, but that's okay. I will just spend that time while I'm waiting editing this video. So now let's get all these little bolts out. And these are also all E10s. Okay, so we have these two long ones at the back. And then we also have these 3 bolts going into the oil pan horizontally from the transmission side. I did have to grab my T25 torx socket and remove this little plastic clip that held these lines into place, these little cooler lines, so that I could get the head of my ratchet in there. And good news here, it does look like all 3 of these bolts going into the oil pan from the transmission are all the same length. So for the rest of the oil pan bolts, I loosened them all by hand first and went back in with battery power. And thankfully all of the rest of them are the same size, so no worries there. All right, all the bolts are out, and now we're going to pry the oil pan off. No, we're not. We're gonna remove this connector first. Okay, now we're gonna pry the oil pan off. This is not the proper use of this tool, but this little scraper actually fits in there really nice. Ooh, I like that sound. Good sounds, good sounds. Yep. Okay, not loving this, but we're gonna get that all cleaned up really well. Also, while we're here, let's note this gorgeous thin bead of seam sealer. This is the gasket. This is the only gasket, and it is so thin. So we're gonna note this when we go to put this back on. All right, there it is, the star of the show. Our little oil pumps. So once I get that out, then I'll scrape the gasket material from the back there. But one thing I'm noticing is the chain is a lot looser than I expected it to be. So I don't know, I just like to observe stuff like this before taking things apart, so I don't think I'm putting them back together wrong. This is the bolt we're gonna remove here, and it is left-hand thread. So go ahead and tighten this bolt to get it off. The special tool that I'm using, actually, now this does require a special tool. I have this cool little gear wrench kit here, and I'm just gonna use the longer one, and then this little T45 torx bit. See, that fits in there like that. So it just has a really low profile, so I think that's gonna fit just fine. Oh, there we go. And now we have 4 little E10 torx bolts. 2 of them are sitting on dowels. Oof, there we go. A little breaker bar action. Okay. All right, well, we should have put a drain pan there, but we didn't. Also, while we're here, something super interesting that my BMW MasterTech friend taught me is that right here is the build date for the pump. So in the middle there, we can see it says 19, and then there's 3 dots on the outside. So this pump, although my car is a 2021, was built in the 3rd month or March of 2019. Let's take off this cover and see what's underneath there. We can definitely see that plastic housing, the plastic adjusting ring there. So comparing that to our new one, that outer ring there is definitely not the same material, definitely steel. I have this plastic little gasket scraper here, and I'm gonna be very gently removing all of this old gasket and cleaning off the sealing surface. These are the 2 dowel pins that we're gonna be removing and replacing. Here's the part number. And here are our new ones. This is the left-hand thread one-time use screw. We are also replacing or renewing all 4 of the oil pump bolts. Now I'm installing our strainer. Not because there's anything wrong with the other one, there wasn't, but just because it's the only way to get a new O-ring, which you have to renew. as far as I know. So I got my two 10mm bolts off of the other pump, and I know I'm overthinking this. That is what I do, people. But yes, that's assembly lube in there, and I spun the oil pump over a bunch of times with the lube in there. Just because I don't like new metal on metal, I'm just, yeah. Okay, so let's get this on. Amazing, there we have it. Let's get it up in there. Obviously, everything has a torque spec that we're gonna follow. First, do note that we're gonna tighten all of these by hand in a crosswise sequence. And then we have a tightening sequence. We're gonna do 15 Newton meters and then 45 degrees, also in an X pattern. In a crisscross pattern, first 15 Newton meters. Alrighty. And you want to turn the bolts 45 degrees in an X pattern as well. And yes, I did all four. I'm just only showing you two. This torque to yield stresses me out. Because I mean, I know, I get the concept. You got to stretch the bolts, but it feels like you're stretching the bolts. And it's just, it's weird. Alrighty, now for our gear bolt. The torque spec is 5 Newton meters and then 90 degrees. So I'm gonna calibrate myself to 5 Newton meters on another random bolt around here. I'm gonna feel what it feels like, and then I'm gonna do a visual of 90 degrees. All right, so solid strategy. I do actually feel very good about that. I also put some red Loctite on there, which it did not call for. That bolt is not going anywhere. But hindsight, now I know what I'll do in the future is actually just pull the gear right off. I'll just mark where the chain and the gear were mated, as if it matters. In my mind it did, but it probably didn't. And then I will install the gear on the pump outside, and that's what I think you should do too. But I honestly don't think there's anything wrong with this method either. I think it's fine. So all right, now I'm gonna move on to my final clean of the sealing surface and get some form in place gasket, the BMW stuff, on the pan and get that up in there. The instructions are really specific about how to lay down the sealant. There's a little arrow here just showing you, especially around the turbo drain area, what to do. No, this is not the same pan. This is the instructions for the Z4. Over here, we've got the size of the bead as well. And also it shows the specific tool for the Loctite that we're gonna be using, which maybe your experience is gonna be different than mine. I hope it is. I was not able to get this from the dealership. The Toyota dealership did not have this, and the BMW dealership had it but refused to sell it to me because it was for warranty purposes internally only. So I actually did find it online, and I also found the tool, and I will link those in the description below. Do you have to do this? Probably not. Do you need to buy the $80 dispensing tool? Also probably not. The reason I decided to invest in it is I'm hoping to do this job again, not on my car, obviously, but once I finish up this job on my car and I have the experience I have learned on my own personal vehicle, then I feel confident telling other people, hey, I can do this on your car. Because very, very shortly, you guys, May 13th, I head out to Houston for my Supra certification training. So then I'm actually certified to work on these cars for real, and then I'll open up my shop to them, which would be great because I'm trying to do more Supras. Could you also just use the Toyota form in place gasket? Most likely. Interesting to note here though, that in Toyota land, we have a total time of 12 minutes to get this sealant on there and get the pan installed. However, if you work on BMWs, I'm sorry to tell you that you only have 10 minutes. So at least on the Supra, we're blessed with 2 more minutes of stress-free time to install this pan. So let's get this going. So this here is the special sealant, and this is the special applicator. This is the copy. There is a beautiful 2mm bead right there, but it's thicker over here. So even though I cut the tip to what I wanted in order to get that result, there I was going slower than I was going there. And we really don't want to over apply this stuff, you guys, especially right here on the turbo oil drain. Why? Well, because what if I put a bunch of goop in here and then I squish it up? And this is a machined surface. This is a beautifully machined surface. You can see the machining marks. All that goop is gonna do is take up a tiny bit of space. So if I put too much, it's gonna just clog this, and the oil's not going to drain, and then my car's going to smoke. So, yeah, we're just going to put a very little bit. I am going to clean this. I already cleaned it, obviously. I already cleaned this. It's absolutely beautiful. I also clearly already cleaned this, but the oil has dripped down. So the last thing that I'm going to do is the final wipe down of this part here. But the first thing that I'm gonna do is clean all the old sealant off of this hardware. Now, I am no cake decorator, and every time I lay down gasket sealer like this, I always think to myself, man, I could have done that better. But hey, the important thing to note here is the thin 2mm bead, and that I'm going on the inside of every bolt hole and just following the diagram. Now, I did have to install this right away, so I did not bother to move my camera. I just installed it. Oil pan is installed. Really, the only trick is once you start applying the sealant, you just have to make sure that you get it up in place within 10 minutes. Then you're just gonna hand tighten all of the bolts around the oil pan and then torque them to specification. All of them around the oil pan are 18 foot-pounds. However, in the rear, the 3 bolts that go in horizontally from the transmission side into the oil pan, those are 14 foot-pounds. And now installation is just the reverse of removal, so we're just gonna whiz through this real quick, but I will, of course, do everything with you still, just show you the step-by-step process and the torque specs for everything. But really, I mean, we're on the home stretch now. This has not been a bad job. Really, my only concern at this point is how much of this work can I do before I install the motor mount and this motor mount bracket. I would love to think that I could put these in after I get everything done so I can keep on moving forward, but I think I might have to wait for those parts to get in. We shall see. But all right, well, let's just get back to it. Let's see. Let's do this! You can see that I plugged the oil level sensor back in and clipped the wire back onto the side of the pan, and now reinstalling these 3 starter motor bolts and torquing them to 14 foot-pounds. Then our acoustic cover, which is held in place with those plastic trim clips, and the starter wiring, reconnecting the wire harness and torquing the power wire to 10 foot-pounds. Now let's get our subframe back up into place. Although here is where I'll probably have to stop until my motor mount comes in. Yeah, because there's no way. Honestly, I've already installed it too far to get. Whoa! Well, that solves that. That is bizarre. Whole new world. I also just pulled this piece out, but yeah, if I go up any higher with it right now, it'll be very difficult to get these pieces in. So I'm gonna be patient. So this is the short-term lift, and that's the long-term lift. I only have 2 lifts. And then sometimes if I've got a project go on the short-term lift that's taking longer, I'll lift it way up into there, and then I'll pull something in underneath it. But right now I can't even do that because I've got the transmission jack. So things still have to get done in the shop. So this happens sometimes. I'm gonna move on to the Mark IV. And right now I'm running electrical, so I'm relocating the battery to the trunk. So I've got some work to do there. I've got some parts to order. And then also I've got an exhaust over there that I'm gonna be installing, and the tips are gnarly. So this is the after. Yeah, they look freaking good. And then I just went ahead and swapped over all of my little exhaust rubbers and the valve. But like, look at that. Finally! Said I would get here in 3 to 5 days. Of course, it was 5 days for me, just my luck. It was also Easter weekend. I ordered them and Easter weekend passed, and I guess Monday is a holiday for most people. Didn't know. I was here working all weekend. So anyway, now that I've finally got these parts in, I'm gonna go install them. It has nothing to do with the oil pump, so I'm just gonna go ahead and do them. And then I'll finally be able to put the subframe up all the way in. So just torqued that lower steering shaft bolt to 21 foot-pounds. It's just easiest to access before you bolt everything up. And it's actually telescoping at the top, so it'll kind of move with you while you get the subframe up that last few inches into place. And really the only part that gave me any trouble were just these front brackets, and a little persuasion with a pry bar and a soft hammer did it for me. All right, so minor miracle. I actually got all these one-time use bolts correct. So I've laid them out on both sides, so you'll see this is just one set, but we're gonna double it for the other side. You can see I've got them all lined up on the other side. So these are in order. This is the bolt in the front that goes here, going down into this center one here is this long bolt, and is this one. And then we have these 2 in the rear The one that's a little bit closer to the front of the vehicle has this little shoulder on it, and it is this one. And then this last one here, which is this one. So here's all the hardware for this side, and got everybody laid out for this side as well. I actually used all the old bolts to just put everything into place first and make sure that I had everybody lined up, especially what I realized from breaking that other motor mount. I'm like, maybe there's, even though the subframe was fairly easy to get out, I'm like, maybe there's some other stuff that's tweaked in here. So it's sitting in there on the other bolts, but I have not replaced them yet. I'm gonna do that next. But first, I installed these 4 bolts, 2 on this side and 2 on the other side. And now we're gonna torque them to 14 foot-pounds. And these are all E10 bolts. And then obviously we will be repeating this on the other side. So the first torque to yield bolts that we have replaced and are torquing right now are these 2 front ones. They are E14s, and we're gonna start off at 74 foot-pounds and then 55 degrees. We will be tightening the subframe going front to back, and the first 2 pairs of bolts are the same, 74 foot-pounds and 55 degrees. And no, I'm not gonna make you watch me torque all of these. It's painful and my facial expressions only get worse, but the main point I'm trying to get across here is that if I can do it, you can do it. I mean, shoot, I'm only 5'4", I'm not the strongest tech in the world. And now these last 2 torque to yield bolts are gonna be 80 foot-pounds and then 45 degrees. And we are gonna do the 21 millimeter first and then the E18. I also wanted to note that I actually don't have an angle torque wrench for these higher values. So I use this weird little angle tool to map out the start and finish points of the bolts. And I just did the degree part the old-fashioned way with a paint marker and a breaker bar. That's probably the most difficult part of this entire job for me. Now we're just gonna put all the rest of the suspension components like back together loosely, then get the wheels on, lower the car, and actually torque everything. At this point, I also reconnected the coolant pipe with those E8 bolts torqued to 9 foot-pounds. Then I reinstalled the wire harness, torquing the T25 screws to 71 inch-pounds. After getting everything in place, before I put the wheels on, I did install my new lug studs, heck yeah. Then the one thing that I didn't have to torque under the vehicle's weight were the tie rod ends. The torque spec for the tie rod end nut is 122 foot-pounds. But I needed the other wheel to be touching the ground to keep it from turning with the torque, so I did those one at a time first. Now I'm doing things probably a little bit out of order compared to the way that y'all will, because my jack is broken and my replacement still has not come in. So my car is a little bit stuck on the lift right now. But when I had the front end jacked up and on the jack stands, I was not able to get the exhaust out the back to clear the bumper. So I did have to jack up the rear end and swap out my exhaust, because I am replacing the rest of the exhaust today. So in order to do that, I did have to put the wheels on. Next, I'm gonna get the downpipe back up in there so I can connect up the rest of the exhaust. Heck yes, we've got the exhaust installed. There's 2 little nuts up there for the bracket. We've got our V-band clamp here. I did find it easier to install the clamp from above. So I just put the vehicle down real quick, just lowered the lift, and just got that on, and it was a lot easier than trying to mess with it, because it's just like you have such a little amount of room there to put your hands in. And got the new exhaust in, so I guess I'll show you that. New old exhaust. This is what I had on my other Supra. Hello. Bird pooped right on the hood. I was able to restore these tips and they look freaking phenomenal. Okay, I think I messed up here. I think I was supposed to replace this bolt as well, because it is also torque to yield. This is 74 foot-pounds and 90 degrees. So I will, I'm gonna order a couple new ones. I'm not a fan of all these torque to yield. I'm just gonna straight up say that. I do not like all this torque to yield stuff. So, all right, 74 foot-pounds, my 18 millimeter socket is not deep enough. Okay, 74. And 90. We're very scientific here with our 90 degree, okay? We're just drawing some lines where we start and where we're gonna finish, because we can eyeball 90 degrees, right? But really this is just letting me know the weakness in my current tool setup for working on the Mark V Supra. I've already invested in a lot of new tools, and I'm about to invest in a lot more new tools so that I can make sure I truly do this job correctly. Now, of course, this is my car, but I realize that showing my vulnerability is just gonna get people to leave some nasty comments, so whatever. You do this freaking job then. That's 90. Beautiful. And now let's just get this little guy installed again, just so I don't have to worry about anything going wrong with him. Obviously, don't forget to plug our little connector back in. These bolts in here for the upper control arms are also 74 foot-pounds and 90 degrees. The torque spec for the sway bar end link nut is 41 foot-pounds. So I tightened all of the suspension stuff aside from the motor mount bolts. So now I'm just gonna drop the engine back down and allow it to rest in the motor mounts, and then I can get those installed. Now I can remove my little SST engine hanger bracket, and now that the engine is truly sitting down where it's supposed to, we can finally torque these engine mounting insulators, the motor mounts there, and that is 74 foot-pounds, so I can do this one from above, but I do have to get the driver's side from underneath. So I've got that torqued, I have my oxygen sensors back connected, and the wires are routed back in their little clips. Well, I took the wheel off here again so you could see what I'm doing, and then I get the crappiest camera angle ever of me installing this air intake duct. Alright, whatever, but installing the fender liner is easier with the wheels out of the way, so I recommend doing that a little earlier in the reassembly process. Alright, inner fender liner installed. Now for these little things, I'm not sure. Well, that one, I guess, could look a little bit better. Let's see. Come on, get in there, little friend. Instead of using these, which I didn't have any of these, I just grabbed these from my Christmas tree clip assortment kit, and they worked fine. At this point, now that I have both fender liners installed, I'm getting my wheels back on and torqued down for good. The wheel studs I torqued to 25 foot-pounds, and the wheel nuts I torqued to 103 foot-pounds. Now I'm going to install the air box, which is a step that you didn't have to do. This was, again, because of my rodent infestation. Oh my gosh! Ah! Look what I just found. Alright, not good. I will repair this. And I'm very worried now about more rodent damage in here. So I'm going to do another thorough investigation. And we've got our brand new air filter. Phenomenal! Alright, got that all back together. And then I've got this upper fender plastic on. Now I'll put the other side on. This side is now done. And now we're gonna put our ECU and integration relay back in. Once again, not really sure why we took them out. I would not take them out in the future, but it is what it is. Here we are. Putting all these clips back in, I did refer to the photo that I took at the beginning of this job. Glad I did that. But one thing I just want to know, when you're installing these, you want to begin with the connector like this, with this piece all the way out. And then as you install it, as you push it down, then it will rise up and clip into place. But you can slide it on without that clip being engaged the right way, and then it won't even lock. So then just double check, everybody, because I did install one and then I pulled it right back off. I'm like, what's going on? It's just a new style of connector, that's all. We're just getting used to a whole bunch of new stuff with this job. Now we've got the integration relay in there as well, and there's our wire harness connector, yellow, blue, gray, and black, just like the photo that I took. So very helpful, very helpful. Now we've got this little cover to put back on, and my little strut brace thing. All right, well at this point, I've got everything hooked up, and now the only thing that's left to hook up is the negative battery terminal. But I made a BMW mistake. Guess what has no power right now? Because the battery is disconnected. So, genius, Faye. Alrighty, there we go. And people wonder why I don't keep these in the trunk. On the Mark V's, I always keep them right there under the passenger seat. This is why. And she's making some noises. Now we're going to reinstall negative battery cable. Got that nice and tight. Now she's gonna make a bunch of noises at me and let me know she's angry. Now fill the engine with 6.9 quarts of oil, which I'm not showing here because the last thing I need is to rile y'all up in the comments, although I know this is gonna happen anyway. This is not a video about the proper oil for the B58 engine, you guys. This is a video about my first time installing an oil pump. And you can see here that I'm disconnecting all of the injector connectors so we can prime the oil pump prior to starting the engine. You could also pull the fuse. I think there's also an active test somewhere in ISTA, but I'm not sure where it is. Now, we're just cranking the engine over, and now I'm plugging all the injectors back in, and then firing her back up again, and now let's check our work. As I mentioned earlier, I did not put any of the covers on just yet because I wanted to be able to look and just verify that I did a good job and I'm not seeing any oil leaks. And with all the covers on, it's kind of hard to tell, even if with the acoustic cover it's a little bit hard to tell. So yeah, I'm just making note and everything looks really freaking good. Don't ask me why I'm surprised. The tightening torque for these is 41 foot-pounds plus 45 degrees. After I verified no leaks, I did shut the engine off, let it cool down a little bit, and you can see that I have installed my stiffener plate with all the new hardware, and you can see my marks from the torque to yield. Then of course I installed both of my plastics over here, that center plastic, and this one over here. And then for the final step, just to like wrap up this job, I drove my car for half an hour. I know, bummer. What a hard life I live. And just to be able to check the engine oil level, I tried checking it in ISTA without driving, and you really just have to go through the drive cycle and get the engine warm. Because remember, a lot of what people are experiencing as a symptom of this oil pump failing is an inability to read their engine oil level. So just first being able to just double check and make sure that the car thinks it has enough oil in there, but then also making sure it can actually read it. You know, it's just verifying that I did the job right. Also, speaking of doing the job right, you're probably asking, Faye, what does it cost? Well, obviously this is gonna vary a ton depending on where you go to get it done. I've seen people report online anywhere from like $1,500 at an independent repair shop for this job, all the way up to $4,000 at the dealership out of warranty. When I calculated it for myself, what I would charge a customer ended up being around $2,500, minus the parts that I did not need and minus the work that I did not need with just the total parts and labor, the correct parts, mind you, including the ones I forgot. But as of right now, I'm not actually certified to do this job. So maybe in the future I'll let you know, but I'd love to do this on your car if you can trust me after watching this video. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that it did the job justice. It really seemed like this was a void out there. A lot of people were looking for a DIY tutorial on this job, and I really hope this helped. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.